All right, this demonstration is to show the creation and making of the sheet metal toolbox. Some of the items that you'll receive if you are making the toolbox, you'll receive 2 pieces of sheet metal for the ends. You'll receive a medium-sized piece of sheet metal for the top, and you'll receive a larger piece of sheet metal for the bottom and the sides. To begin, you're going to need to have some bluing fluid available, and this will be applied to the sheet metal over at the staining table so that you actually end up with metal that looks like this. The sides will have sheet metal bluing fluid on the top portion. The top can have, the whole thing could be covered in. If you wish to do it another way, it would be to put about 1 inch of bluing fluid all the way around the outside, something more similar to this. A little bit wide here, but all the lines are being shown to you here, so that's why it was done this way. But typically you can get by with just probably 1 inch around the whole perimeter, and that would probably be enough. And again, let me remind you that this is done over at the staining table. Notice that the bluing fluid brush is on the end of the cap. That's where you'll find it. Okay, and this is permanent dye, so if it gets on your clothes or things like that, it's going to stain them, so be very careful using that. If I get it on my hands, I usually take it off with some sandpaper and soap. Okay, once you have your bluing fluid is dry, let's start with the bottom and lay out the lines for that. In your packet, you'll have a drawing, and the drawing will explain the layout lines to you, and you'll have to do quite a bit of measuring here and laying out. We'll do that with 2 different size rules. As I look at the beginning of the drawing, I see that here I have a 1/2 inch line coming along each side. I have a 3/8 inch line along the top. I have another 7/8 inch line from the edge here, and then another line 3 1/8, and one from the bottom 2 5/8. All these things are explained on your drawing. You just have to look at them and calculate them out. Okay, to lay out a line, we're going to be using a large rule, we're going to be using a small rule, and we're going to be using a scratch-awl. And the way this works is you put the large rule down on your metal, use the small rule, and go with the measurement that is explained on your sheet, which is a 1/2 inch. So I'm using the 1/8 inch scale here, and I'm just checking that the top and the bottom, that I am an 1/8 inch away from the edge. Once I've established that I am top and bottom, I'll take my scratch-awl and scribe the line. Okay, then I'll flip it around and complete the other side. So I want a 1/2 inch top, 1/2 inch bottom, and I just keep adjusting my rule on the left until I have it established. It's easier if you stand up to do this rather than sitting down, and if you're a right-handed person, you want to keep the rule on your left and the scratch-awl on the right. Okay, the next measurement is 3/8 of an inch, and begin to lay it out again the same way, 3/8 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch, and scribe the line. Now when I get to the next line, so that if I did make a mistake with my first line, I don't measure my second line from the first line. I actually measure it from the edge of the metal. And the reason I do that again is for accuracy. In case if this line was wrong, then that one's not necessarily going to be wrong. That one would be correct. So 7/8 and 7/8, and once I've established that, again I'm going to scribe it in. Okay, the third line in again is a combination of adding things together, and that was a combination of 3 1/8 inches. So 3 1/8, 3 1/8, and once I've established it, I draw it in. Again, you'll see me go back and forth quite a few times to make sure I am in the right location. Okay, we're going to spin this around. We're going to get the last line, which is 2 5/8. Get with my ruler, lay it out, 2 5/8. Okay, now once those lines are established there, the next thing I want to do is put the 45-degree angles in right here, where this metal needs to be removed so that we can fold the seams properly. So we're going to take a 45-degree cut out of that particular spot. Now the easy way to do that, or to start with that, is to take a center punch and mark the intersection of that line, those two lines. This half-inch line and this line that you established horizontally here will be the intersection. And I guess before I get too carried away, I wanted you to do a check. This pattern right here will be used to check your layout. It's not to be used as your layout, but to check it, to see if indeed your lines come right through these openings that we have on this side. You can see them here, and they do. They come right through the center here. And just flip this over end for end and check the other side. If there's any discrepancy, this is the time to fix it before you've finished the rest of your lines. So this will be the time to go ahead and fix it. Mine looks fine, and so I'll just go ahead and center punch my intersections. Yeah, I'm going to center punch all 4 intersections. Okay, and then what I want to do is give that some leeway when I bend. I'm going to use the sheet metal punch, and I'm going to punch those 4 corners. So you get all 4 of these punched. Now, from that intersection, I need to create a 45-degree angle, and I guess. Now, from that intersection, I need to create a 45-degree angle, and I guess I could have done that a little bit sooner. How am I going to create a 45-degree angle? Well, I can use this part of the square, and I can lay this part of the square right up on the metal, and I could draw it in like this here. And then I flip it around and draw it in like this. Okay. Another way I could do that is to use a combination square. So if I were to use this side of this combination square, create it like this, around, create it like this. Probably the combination square is a little easier to use and manage. And I probably should have done those angles before I actually made the hole. After I made the center punch mark, it probably been best to line that up with the square and make the lines before I did that. Okay? But as you can see, I was able to do them afterwards also. Okay, so now that we have that all completed, and some of that's been completed ahead of time, we'll now use a pair of aviation snips, and we'll cut those angles out. So we'll cut right on the line, put the point of the scissors right on your hole, and where the point of the scissors ends up, that's where the cut will end up. Okay, good idea to have your safety glasses on as you see the metals flying. There's another set of lines I haven't established yet. It's this line right here. It's already on here, but I didn't show you how I drew that in. We need to have a little bit of space for when this hem is bent. And so in order for that to clear the sides and everything else, we need to take out an extra amount of material right here, which is 1/8 of an inch. So we bring this in from the edge, 5/8 of an inch, and draw a line down, which means we're actually going to notch this corner out right here. Okay, now I could do that with a rule, just like before. Just establishing 5/8 of an inch in, like this, and drawing the line. It's only this corner right up here that gets notched out, but that's the corner I'm taking out. So I have to do that on both sides. So again here, I'm cutting down my 7/8 inch line right here, and I'm cutting out on the new line I just established. Okay, I have to do that on this side as well. And here. Okay. All right, now I want to show you something else to do with this piece right here. This piece is going to have the sides example, right here, we're going to have pop rivets going all the way around the sides here. And so it's easier now to get these holes punched now than it would be to drill them later. So taking my black marker and looking at, you know, the little half-inch line here, basically I want to be about halfway across the material, not too close to the corner. And I want it 2 on the top, 3 spaced out here in the middle, and 2 on this side. And so I'm just kind of going around and establishing where I want to punch these holes approximately. Just kind of in the middle again, as I mentioned, but not too close to the ends or the angles. Okay, so I'll take my sheet metal punch and work my way around the project. On to the top, the layout for the top is again very similar to what we just did for the bottom. We have a set of measurements that we're going to use. This line here is 3/8 inches in from the top. The next line down from that is a combination of adding the 3/8 and 2 1/8 here, so that makes it 2 1/2 from here to here, 2 1/2 inches. And then from this end into this established line is 2 1/8. And I've got all those measurements just come right off of the drawing. Okay, and I've got the 2 1/2-inch lines on the side, laying those out the same exact way I did previously with the 2 rules and the scratch out. Okay, now because these angles here that are created here, these are not 45-degree angles, so we have to establish those by measuring, and we made it easy for you. We actually made a pattern for you to use here. So we're going to use a pattern for a couple of things. Number one, we're going to first of all put it on here and check to see if our scribed lines, I'll go this way, if our scribed lines are actually in the right spot. So if I put the pattern on here, yes, I can see it comes right through the center, and it's in the established spot that it should be. If this line did not come through the center, then I would need to make some changes. Okay? I also use this pattern to actually get my angles established. So I can establish this angle, I can establish this, this, and this. Okay? So all those pieces can be established. Then I'm going to go to the other end, and I repeat that same process. Establish this, this, and this. Okay, now besides that, I have the handle holes. So I make a little scribe mark from the pattern here. Okay, so you'll see those in just a minute. Also, there's a hasp that goes on here. That's the 2 holes at the top. So scribe those in. Don't hammer them, just scribe them. All right, you'll see once I'm done here scribing, you'll see them. Okay, so here's my handle holes. These 4 here. Here's my 2 holes for my hasp. Okay, you'll notice lines didn't quite come right up to the 1/2 inch and so on, but I'm going to leave my 1/2 inch line that I originally had and go by that. Usually it's better to take off a little more than not enough. Okay, so again, we're going to go back to that point where we will punch and ease some of the pressure on the fold here. So we'll take a scratch awl. I can use a scratch awl. I could also use a center punch, either one to mark my metal. Okay, those intersections, again, where the line meets with the 1/2 inch line on the outside, those are all going to be punched and then cut out. Oops, gotta punch first. Okay, now cut out. Get your 4 holes punched. Now you can cut out. Just from experience, I've always found make these a little bit wider than actually what you're drawing. Just usually need just a little more room there. Okay, these are going to take care of our angles. Now we also have the corners to cut. Okay, this corner here, we'll take it down along the 1/2 inch line, and then to this angle, right across the angle. Okay, and then the rear, angle on the rear. Okay, same thing on this side. And here. Okay, now we have the holes for our hasp and so forth. So what I'm going to do is punch one of those and then all 4 handle holes. The reason I only did 1 hasp hole is because sometimes my hasp holes aren't always drilled consistently the same, so they end up a little different. So I'm just going to do 1 to establish 1, and then I'll punch the other one and get it completed once I get my hasp in place. Now this one I can get with a sheet metal punch. These here, I have to drill. I found a piece of scrap wood. I need to drill on some scrap wood. I've got an 1/8 inch bit chucked in my drill. So on those locations for the handle, go ahead and drill them out. Got all 4 of those drilled. All right, as long as I'm thinking about this, would be a good time to establish the other part of my hasp. In your hardware bag, you'll have the top part of your hasp right here. Okay, line that up with your hole that's already established there and see if your mark, and mine does, lines right up on the other hole. Okay, it's good to go, so I don't need to worry about that other than to punch it. Center punch it and then sheet metal punch. Okay, and this piece is ready to be bent. All right, the next thing we're going to lay out is the ends.